Hi, I'm Brian. Kettle's on, make yourself a cup of tea. Now today I want to talk about the MCU. Since Iron Man was released in 2008, Marvel has been a studio to beat in the superhero genre. With an excellent balance of excellent stories, action, humour, they've managed to bring the superhero films to the front and centre of mainstream movies. Yes, X-Men and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films were very well received, but not to the extent that the MCU became. Marvel had a vision that no one had tried before, to create an interconnected universe like they do in the comics, so why not do it in the movies based on those comics? It was risky, but they went for it, and I think everyone can agree that it was a risk worth taking. It has been very popular, with millions of fans eagerly awaiting each new film, but in doing this, Marvel couldn't afford to have an unsuccessful film. Each film, good or bad, had to perform well, or it could jeopardise the whole road plan for the universe. When films were good, they were excellent, with films like The First Avengers, Captain America Winter Soldier, Infinity War, and Endgame. When they were bad, they were bad. Thor the Dark World, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then there was Captain Marvel, which was just mediocre. It was neither good nor bad. If it was a colour, it would be beige. It was just kind of there. And personally, I think that Marvel and Disney didn't have as much faith in Captain Marvel as other films, which is why it was released so close to Endgame, making people feel like they had to see it, thinking it would be important when really you didn't need to see it for Endgame. If there was more time between the release of Captain Marvel and the release of Endgame, I don't think Captain Marvel would have performed as well as it did. Everyone was hyped and excited about Endgame. I knew all films were connected. Now, as successful as the MCU has been, their biggest achievement, the Infinity Saga, and their biggest success, Endgame, could also be their biggest problem and lead to their downfall. Marvel so far have released 23 films, from Iron Man to Spider-Man Far From Home, with Black Widow due out at some point, but from the people I personally know, there's not much excitement for Black Widow. And while WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier haven't exactly underperformed, they also haven't been the powerhouse shows Disney had hoped for, which brings me to why I made this video. With a very successful 13-year run and 23 successful movies, making billions of dollars at the box office, maybe Marvel needs to stop. Endgame was the end project of a very high-risk project that Marvel gambled on, and it worked. It paid off big time for them. People loved the MCU, were excited about each upcoming movie to see what would happen and how it would push the overall arcing narrative forward, but it was all resolved in the highly satisfying conclusion in Endgame. But that's the point. Endgame was the conclusion. People invested themselves in this story for over 10 years. Now Marvel has to generate interest in a whole new story all over again from the start. Characters that people know, such as Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, and along with others, have gone, and new characters need to be introduced. No one at the moment currently in the MCU has the charisma to carry it forward like Robert Downey Jr. did. So with the Infinity War saga wrapped up, and most of the original Avengers gone, and a slate of new heroes which a lot of people aren't really excited about, what is the future going to hold for the MCU? Sure, Marvel will start on a new story moving across all the movies, but will they be able to span it for another 10 years? Or will it just be across Phase 4? Will interest in superhero films remain as high as it is now? I personally don't think it will. Film genres come and go. Westerns, war, sci-fi, action movies have all been popular and at the front of movie making at some point. But the audience then moves on wanting something new and fresh, which is what I think will happen with the MCU. Endgame was the end of an epic journey which lasted for over 10 years. But now that train's pulled into the station and people can get off satisfied or they can stay on. But I think the people who do stay on will be disappointed and not invest the amount of time they did with the past films. Because no matter what Marvel or Disney decide to do going forward, nothing they do will surpass or live up to the 23 film story arc. I for one was glad to have stuck with it to see it concluded, but was also relieved when it did conclude, as it was beginning to feel like a friend who'd stayed over for a few days while his place was getting done out, but 3 years later is still staying over and has outstayed his welcome. I've no doubt Marvel will keep making movies and trying their best to please every time, but ultimately I think it will fail. They should end off now while they're on top of Endgame, and being remembered for their greatness, rather than being remembered for has-beens with past glory. I for one am happy to get off the train now it's pulled into the station after Endgame, and I know I'm not the only one. That's all from me. I'll have to make a cup of tea.